Hello, everyone. It's Dr. T. I'm a tech trainer and career coach, and I help professionals transition to tech by leveraging their existing skills and abilities. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the Scrum Master role. The Scrum Master is a great role to transition into, but it's not an entry level position. Now, what do I mean by that? It is a role that you will most likely not have as your first role as you pivot into tech. If you don't have a strong set of transferable skills that you honed in an agile project or agile product delivery environment, it may be difficult for you to transition as a Scrum Master without any prior experience. Now, let's talk about the why of that. And we can do that by looking at the Scrum Master profile. Scrum Master is a servant leader. The Scrum Master puts the team's ability to deliver quality first and ensures that the team can operate at its maximum potential at all times. So the role is about the team, creating a nurturing environment, creating a safe environment, creating an environment free of impediments. That's the Scrum Master's role. You're down at the team level. You're working to ensure that the team is delivering quality at all times. The Scrum Master is also an agile expert. So here's where we come into it might not being, it less likely being your first role. You need to know the ins and outs of agile, the importance of agile, the benefits of agile, all of the principles and practices and processes related to agile, as well as the best practices in implementing the Scrum framework, because you're the leader, okay? And in being the expert, there will most likely be expectations for you to also coach your team. You may not be the enterprise agile coach, but at the team level, you may have to stop and deliver ad hoc training if you see that the team needs some kind of refresher that may be given at an enterprise level, but you're seeing things at your team level that you just don't have time to pull in the agile coach or make time for the agile coach to deliver to the team. You're the coach. So you're coaching your team, and if there isn't an agile coach at the enterprise level, you may have to coach leaders and other teams on how to navigate and how to best function within the Scrum framework. So you're a coach. You're also a facilitator. And by that I mean you are coordinating and hosting meetings internally for your team to discuss blockers or scope issues, or maybe the team needs feedback from the product owner. You're that person to schedule that meeting and make certain that the purpose of the meeting is fulfilled. You may also coordinate with outside team members to bring in information, describe data, describe a process that's important for your team to continue moving forward in delivering quality. So you're a facilitator. You're also a risk manager. During those daily stand-ups, you're listening for those blockers, the issues, and the concerns that the team members bring up. You set the tone and you set the environment for it to be a safe space for the team to communicate that information. But it's your job to take the information and resolve any impediments, blockers, or mitigate the risk. So you're a risk manager as well. So these are quite a few responsibilities. You must have the ability to function on your own, take on these tasks, and with the focal point being making the team better and helping the team successfully implement the solution. That's your job as a Scrum Master. Now let's take a look at the core team. You have the product owner, Scrum Master, and the dev team. Those are the members of the Scrum team. The product owner is known as the content authority. They own the vision, the product backlog, create the epics, and overall drive the solution from a initiation perspective in terms of what do we want to deliver, what have I heard from the stakeholders, what do I need to communicate to the dev team. Product owner is the content authority. The Scrum Master is the process authority. The Scrum Master is working to ensure that all of the Scrum activities are being facilitated and that the right individuals are participating. And the Scrum Master is responsible for the Scrum lifecycle. And as we talked about before, ensuring that all the risks are addressed and mitigated in order to keep the team moving forward. The Scrum Master is the process authority. The dev team, they're the producers. They may not necessarily be coders per se in a software development environment, but they are the people who deliver the solution, whatever that solution may be. The Scrum is used outside of software development as well, but the team that produces that outcome is referred to as a dev team in all environments. And they're responsible for delivering that quality that the Scrum Master is driving along with the product owner. So this team is expected to operate with a level of transparency regarding communicating issues, if there is some unclarity around the scope, or if they believe there's going to be some schedule delays. This team is expected to communicate that so that the Scrum Master can take that information, resolve it, and keep things on track. So transparency is a key expectation from the Scrum team, the dev team, as long as there is an environment where there aren't any repercussions for being transparent. So Scrum Master is responsible for keeping that open, clear environment, safe environment. The dev team also creates the sprint backlog based on the product backlog that the product owner owns. So the epics that the product owner creates are decomposed and distilled down to workable items that become a part of the sprint backlog, and that's the responsibility of the dev team to create those user stories that are traceable back to the epics in the product backlog. So that's the team. It's a very small team, but it can be a very effective team if we have that Scrum Master there guiding each team member in their specific capacity and making certain that blockers and impediments are removed. Now let's look at the Scrum activities. There are 5 main activities that the Scrum Master is there orchestrating. So they're daily stand-ups. The daily stand-up has as an input the team roster. We could start there. Who's on the team? What's their commitment level to the team? Are they 25%, 50%? Are they persistent team members? And what capacity do they serve in? That's the input. The output from the stand-up is the RAID log or the issue log or the action item list. When I worked in this capacity, I kept a RAID log, and RAID stands for risk, action, impediments, issues, and dependencies. So RAID, risk, action items, issues, dependencies. That's what came out of the stand-up. I listened to the team members talk about what they did, what they planned to do, and any blockers that they had. And then I took that information, recorded it in the log, and that was my to-do list, really. So from the stand-up, you have the sprint planning sessions. And I held these bi-weekly. And the major input was the product backlog. So the product owner set the tone in terms of priority and scope, and we took that priority list of backlog items, which were epics, and the team created their user stories. And in sprint planning, we estimated in terms of relative complexity, and we pulled those items that were uh, in align with the priorities for the sprint uh, into our sprint backlog, and that's the set of work items that the team ended up working on. So the inputs was the product backlog, the output was an updated sprint schedule and an updated sprint backlog. So then there's the sprint review. This is the time for the team to show and tell. We've had our list of priorities over the sprint, and the sprint could last 2 to 3 weeks. And the team has committed to a set of work items, and now it's time to show the work. So here is where the team, on a bi-weekly basis, when I led sprint reviews, came in, pulled up the sprint backlog, and walked the product owner and any visitor or any stakeholder that he or she requested to be present, showed them the functionality. So the sprint review was bi-weekly, and it ended up with a closed out sprint when we had those items that were all approved for the backlog, or a small list of items that needed to be debugged or worked on, based on the priority that the product owner set within the sprint review. So the sprint review was a time to showcase what was done and then to talk about any areas of improvement or any items that needed to be worked in order to close the sprint out. Then there's a sprint retrospective. We held the sprint retrospective bi-weekly because it came right after the sprint review. So it was the team's time to talk about what went well, what could be improved, and just overall concerns or issues that the team had. With the sprint review, the product owner was not invited. It was the Scrum Master and the dev team. And this was done to foster that transparency and openness that's needed to get to the core of any issues, because the sprint retrospective is an input to continuous improvement. The team needs to be free to talk about things that they think went well or not, and with a sense of anonymity. So the sprint review is a time to close out the sprint from a team perspective, from a work improvement perspective. So out of the sprint review came updates to the rate log as well, because there may have been actions for me or risk or impediments that came up and issues that came up that I needed to record on the rate log, and then take that as my action to go come back to the team and improve and talk about the improvements or the impediments that I was able to remove. Sprint retrospective. As well as these team activities that focus on keeping the product moving along, there's also the backlog grooming. And this is where the product owner works with the team to talk about the scope on a larger scale, look at items in the backlog that might need to be resized or may need to be reprioritized, and just continuously flush out that backlog. So as the sprints come along, it's easier to pull from that product backlog and have things refined at a level that they're really ready to work. So we'd understand the definition of ready, what the definition was of done was, and looking at always keeping a very refined backlog so that we're ready to work and there's continuous delivery. Okay. Now, when in delivering from a agile perspective and using the Scrum framework, there are a set of metrics that the Scrum Master must be aware of that the team is being measured against. We have velocity, and that's the measure of probability based on the user story count for the sprint and for the epics and the product backlog. But there are three other metrics that the Scrum Master needs to kind of keep an eye on. Well, definitely not kind of keep an eye on from a lean management perspective. Okay, so let's look at and talk about the defect rate. The defect rate is the percentage of production output that falls below quality standards. So essentially, they're saying here how much of the work that you're doing is falling below the acceptance criteria, essentially, because all user stories have a set of acceptance criteria. So how much of that backlog that you have committed to and delivered is requiring rework? If you start seeing a pattern of this as you're moving through sprints, it's time to stop and think about, is the dev team really informed about the scope and what's to be delivered? Are the user stories really capturing what the acceptance criteria is? Because maybe there's a gap there. But to truly understand what's keeping us from continuously delivering quality. So you need to look at the defect rate and understand this metric throughout the sprint and throughout the release schedule. Now, let's talk about time to market. So this is a measure of, well, how long is it taking the team to actually get done? They've gotten to a pattern where their velocity is improving, so shouldn't they be delivering a lot quicker? The time to market is looking at from the time we define the scope, turn it over to the team, how long is it taking to get things done? We should be about continuous improvement. We're not pushing the team to do a 2-week sprint worth of work, in a week. But are there times where we are lagging that we could pick up and get the work done? And then understanding what's causing that lag. Are we waiting on data from another team? Are we waiting on support from another team? How can we improve the timing on our delivery? And then the sprint completion rate is another metric. And this is a rate of kind of actuals versus what you committed to. Okay, so similar to what we talked about from the defect rate, but looking at, you said you could do these amount of items within the sprint. We've had our sprint planning. We've talked about what the scope is and what the definition of ready and done is. So how much of that did you actually get done? Are we not sizing stories the right way? And therefore we're underestimating the level of work that it's taking. What are we doing that our actuals versus our committed are off? You're looking to monitor and control this metric as well. So as you can see here, the Scrum Master has a detailed leadership role, tracking metrics. You're working across team. You are working in your team. It's a critical role. It's a leadership role. It is one that you can definitely transition into. And I've seen individuals transition from project management into Scrum Master, from business analyst into Scrum Master, and be very successful, as well as QA manager, be very successful. So it is a role that you can pivot into. And I'd like to hear your comments on whether you think it's an entry-level role or not. And certainly if you've been in this role, how successful you've been and what transferable skills you've used. So comment below with this information, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.